I've got this concept rewirement, and I've been working on that for probably about 13 plus years now. And the whole idea of rewirement is this reframing the way you think about retirement income planning, the distribution period over the accumulation period. And we talk about it a lot in the sense of like saving and then spending, but we don't spend a lot of time on like, how do we change the behavior of people?
Hello and welcome to Pathways E3, a special edition of Pathways with Amber Stitt. The Pathways E3 podcasts were recorded with special guests who were attending and collaborating at the NAIFA E3 conference in Newport Beach, California in September 2025. Let's join the conversation. All right, we are live. We are...
What? I thought you wanted me to do the script. We're live with NAIFA E3.
We are live. Jamie, are we live? We are live, you guys. Well, you're watching it post-production live, but we are at NAIFA E3. Thanks for being here, Jamie.
Thanks for having me on. It's great.
So we have the famous Jamie Hopkins here, and he was just on main stage. So we are so excited to have him on the show. And if you don't know him already, he's famous for a lot of things. And we're going to put a lot about him on the description box. We'll save that for later. But Jamie, you spoke today about... we'll call it a retirement presentation, but it's way more than that. Rewirement is something that you focused on. There's been an evolution that you shared today. So can you just talk a little bit about what was important to bring to NAIFA E3 for their third year?
Yeah, absolutely. And you did a great job on stage today too. So I shouldn't forget that before I get going. But I've got this concept rewirement, and I've been working on that for probably about 13 plus years now. And the whole idea of rewirement is this reframing the way you think about retirement income planning, the distribution period over the accumulation period. And we talk about it a lot in the sense of like saving and then spending, but we don't spend a lot of time on like, how do we change the behavior of people? We talk about the math and science of it and the 4% and all these other things, but it's mostly, to me, a change management situation of somebody going from this time period of working and then retiring, which is the change moment, and then being retired. And you do have to think about life different now, how you're going to spend your money, how you're going to spend your time. That's one that probably everybody who works with retirees knows is you've had that client family member that's just like, I did not know I was going to have that much free time. You know, they can only golf or play chess or garden or spend time with their grandkids, right? So much in a week.
Yep. So then this leads me to a question I didn't tell you I was going to ask of you, but when are you retiring?
So when am I retiring? No idea, first of all, right? We don't really know that in general. But I used to always think that I would never retire and I'd become a writer.
Okay.
I wrote some screenplays early on in my life, and I kind of wanted to do that. They did not become movies. So I worked on one comedy film and one horror film and worked on those.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that... maybe will still exist. I'm not really sure what's going to happen there with AI, but I do feel like books are going to kind of disappear. They're mostly going to be written by generative programs. And so I'm wrapping up one book now, and I've got one more I'd really like to write before, in my view, there's going to be the death of the author as we know it. So I have to reframe now and rewire how I think about retirement.
Yep.
I have thought about a food truck. I really want to buy a burger food truck.
Like burgers?
Called Bumpy's Burgers, and it's a dino. I actually have the drawing of the dinosaur and outline of the food truck side already. So I have thought about this a bit. I love making food, and so that's a possible outcome. Okay,
so I feel like you're a little forward thinking. I only know that because we've had talks and conversations with you just being in the industry so long. I met you through American College taking your courses, or you were part of different courses and the education modules. But I think that you've been instrumental in putting together actionable steps that the industry's been following for years. I mean, that's actually true. There's been implementation. You've done different things. You talked about a little bit about almost like I am statements. It was almost like something you were saying, like putting it into your mind to be something different in the future. Mm-hmm. You talked about kind of reverse engineering, but can you kind of like articulate, you might be doing something different. It might not be retirement. It might just be an evolution of something else, and that's okay. Any advice there on how to figure that out for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely, Amber. One of the things that I talked about was this evolution of yourself, that the you tomorrow is actually somewhat different than the you today. Now, when you go out a really long period of time, like you're a lot different. For athletes, I use this example is they want to become the best in their sport or win something. And so there's this future version of them that's achieved this outcome, that's become a better player, a better teammate, a champion, or Olympian. And actually, the best way to do that is actually to envision you being there at the finish line, you being on the podium, you having the gold medals, and then actually work back from that goal. So you don't say, what am I going to go do tomorrow? You actually say, what did I do right before I stepped up on that Olympic podium with the gold around my neck? And business owners can do this too. You're a builder of businesses. And you can think about it as, well, I'm going to go build this awesome media company and it's going to hit this goal. Well, what did I do the day before? And it was probably delegate. It was probably not, do all the sales calls the day before. And you work back, and this actually creates an anchor point that is that successful you, that new you in the future, versus anchoring off you today, then hoping we're going to change. Because every time you anchor off the present, we're more likely to keep the present going tomorrow.
Future self-connectedness.
Yeah.
Future self. You mentioned that.
Yeah. So that is the idea of, so let's just say that future version of us, that us in 30 years. It's an interesting concept because first time you bring it up, do you really think about yourself in 30 years very often? I
did a leadership lunch with Gino Wickman's 10 disciplines. And that was 10 years out. And I was like, well, Vivian will be only a certain amount of, like, her age. I probably won't be doing a ton until she graduates, because it kind of landed, like I was like a 12, 14 year plan.
Okay.
Once I started working on that, it was interesting.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things, I had somebody come up after I talked and said this and said, well, she was pretty young. She goes, well, at first I thought 30 years out, I'll be like myself, but just older. And then she was like, and then as you kept talking, she was like, oh, I'm not going to be much like myself today in 30 years. I will be a very different person with different interests and different hobbies, and the world will have changed around me too. And so as much as we think about that person, we can draw goals out. We can actually name things too, which I think is really cool. So like for our kids, right? When I think about my kids, think about your kid, like naming, if you want them to go to college, like naming their 529 plan, like your favorite university one, right? So if you like, I'm a Notre Dame fan. So if I name my kids like Rebecca's Notre Dame Fund versus Rebecca's 529 Fund, I get more connected with that future version of myself and that account. If you say retirement home fund, like don't do that. Pick the town you want to be in, right? Yeah. Like you want to be in Cape May, New Jersey. You want to be in Hawaii. Like actually visualize that and create that point. And then you become more connected to this future version, and you're more likely to follow along with those actions to get you there.
That's why you've already named your food truck?
Yeah. So Bumpy's Burgers, that's exactly why. So it wasn't always a dinosaur. Dinosaur came later. It was a chef that was holding a burger and like it's going over the road. So it's Bumpy's. At Bumpy's Burgers, I felt like it was easy to say. And then I kind of wanted to swap out the chef with the dinosaur. Like it's a little bit more fun. So it's kind of like one of those long neck green dinosaurs, right?
Brontosaurus.
Yeah, the Brontosaurus-esque dinosaur. So there's some variations of that one, but we'll call it a Brontosaurus today.
Okay, so you kind of glossed over this new book, and I noticed some doodles on it. So I saw the cover. I don't know but I think it's coming up for pre-sale. Pre-order.
Yeah, it is on pre-order.
Yep.
It's not a labradoodle, though. It's hand drawings. So,
I said doodle. Did I say? Okay.
Doodle.
Okay.
But
sure.
See?
Good point. Those are everywhere in Arizona. Yeah.
I have a labradoodle also named Baxter. He's wonderful.
Aww. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Pathways. Please consider giving us a like and subscribing to the channel. Your support goes a long way towards helping us bring you more compelling content. Remember, let's take action together. Now let's jump back into the conversation.
But yeah, the new book is something I've wanted to do for a while now. It's been a couple year concept in my head, and it's called Your Retirement Sketchbook. It's 125 different topics on retirement, going from saving for retirement to investing for retirement to retiring to just spending in retirement and then end of life planning. So it does the whole kind of arc of preparing and going through it. But it's 125 topics across those domains or time periods. And then we did sketches. So if you've ever seen like sketch art when somebody's like talking, we had those kind of all drawn out. So every page is like a kind of like a topic and then sketch art. So that came out of my really terrible drawings where I did little videos. And I said, I think there's a way to do a book around this. And so I actually wrote the book in an Excel file, which is super weird.
Huh.
because every chapter follows a formula of a quote, a fact, a citation,
okay, you had to kind of link it up like a huge library.
Yeah. So Bonnie Treichel, then I said, hey, I need somebody if I'm going to ever get this done. And I called her and said, do you want to do it? And she said yes. And so book's all done. It's publishing with Harriman House. Officially goes live March 31st, 2026, but it is up Barnes & Noble's, Target. Somebody sent me a link for, which is funny. You don't think about selling your book in Target. And Amazon, obviously, where most people buy books today.
So you know what I'm going to do. You know I'm going to go to Target and take a picture next to it.
Yeah,
definitely
well, you have to wait a couple of months to do that in person, but it will be cool. It's fun to see the book in real life. I'm going to be doing got an opportunity to do a book signing release party alongside something else actually at NASDAQ.
Oh.
When it goes live. So we'll do that the night before, which will be really cool.
That is neat. Okay. So I wanted to, do you think we have enough time to talk about the 4% rule and your opinion on it?
Quickly. So I always say the 4% finding, it's not a rule. There's a little meme out there that makes its way around the internet of me holding a sign that says it's not a rule. It's kind of funny. But yeah, so it was a finding. It was a historical research based off...
Aren't they teaching it everywhere? Like in CFP or...
So that's the difference from a rule and a finding, right?
Okay.
A finding is something we found to be true in the past. That's like saying my sports team won every game last year. That does not mean your sports team's going to win every game this year. That's not a rule, right? A rule is like you hike the ball and your players are offsides, you get a penalty. That's a rule. Every time it's the same.
Yeah.
But this is really a finding. It's what happened in the past. It is not required to be true moving forward. And that's the difference from a finding and a rule. And so it really is a finding. It's a historical fact around a 50-50 bond stock portfolio, 30 years. What could you distribute and not run out of money, inflation adjusted for 30 years? It's a very specific finite research pool. But what you find is there's a lot of things you can do to vastly increase that. If you add international stocks, you add more equity, you include your home equity, your reverse mortgages into it. You can start to move this to where 6% is a much more sustainable distribution kind of rule of thumb. Now, again, if the market tanks for years early in retirement, bonds go back to zero, it is very possible that it doesn't work even at 4%. Historically, across the globe, the US and only a couple other countries, 4% really worked. We've had such outperformance in the equity markets in the US, it's really carried it. Now, could that be the case for the next 100 years? Absolutely. But could we also have a flat decade of returns and it just doesn't work? Of course it could. I think the 4% finding is super useful for Americans so they understand a rule of thumb. I don't think it's a rule. And I do actually think people can actually spend more than the 4% says, although you'll see Morningstar and others say, hey, it might be too aggressive, but I think most research points to it's probably too conservative for most people.
Well, we also have history, and you talk about, you're like the first person that looked at the Monte Carlo, and that's where my head exploded back in the day when I was learning financial planning. I was like, this is stressful. Looking at all these waves, this just feels like anxiety and something really bad's going to happen over there. I think you're the first person that's kind of brought that to light and maybe re-identified or assessed this rule over the finding, getting people to really think about what do they want? Because numbers, we don't even know what technology could do. We're going to go into some new historical times that we've never charted before.
Oh, yeah. I mean, every day is a new day. It's different than it was in the past, but we have to learn from the past and try to use it the best we can. That's why it's a guideline, not a rule. Yeah. And Monte Carlo, right? It's a very useful kind of modeling to show outcomes, but it shouldn't be relied upon again, right? It's a rule, like it's some in-stone commandment. It's a helpful guideline. One of the problems, though, in the way that Monte Carlo has been expressed has been mostly in success and failure rates. Now, Monte Carlo does not have to be expressed that way,
sure,
but it's mostly how our industry has looked at it. I think that is very harmful because retirement will not be about success or failure. It'll be about adapting, right? It's not linear. We will move all over the place. Our life will change. Our goals will change.
Yeah.
And people are very resilient and we find a way.
Okay. So to wrap this up, from your perspective, do you want to win the game or change the game? If you had to pick between the two.
Oh, that's a really good one. I would probably change the game. I tell my kids all the time, I coach, and I say the two things you can control, right, is your attitude and effort. You don't always win. And winning's probably debatable what that really means half the time anyway. I'd rather change. I view myself as a builder of things. So It's about building and developing, not always about winning.
Sometimes you have to yell at the ref, but not all the time.
I sometimes get in, loose arguments with people. Yes.
No. And all good fun. Well, I really appreciate spending time with you this week. And I love that we could do the podcast again and maybe more to come.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on. You do such a great job with
Thank you. All right. So look for his book. We'll have information in the show notes. Thanks, you guys. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Pathways E3, recorded at the NAIFA E3 conference in Newport Beach, California. Join us for more insightful conversations with the experts and leaders of their industries. Until next time, keep taking action on your unique path.